So John Greenleaf Whittier is not one of New England's greatest poets. That honor would probably belong to someone like Robert Frost, Walt Whitman, or Henry Longfellow. I'm sure some of you will be happy to tell me which one of these is actually the best, possibly because you wrote a thesis or dissertation on them. I'm looking forward to this coffee hour conversation. For now, though, let's settle down and relax. Despite this poem being called The Pumpkin, I think you'll find it's not really about the pumpkin, but instead it's about what pumpkins meant for the author when he was a child. As I read this poem, be aware of the different feelings and emotions that come up as you inevitably recall your own childhoods. O greenly and fair in the lands of the sun, the vines of the gourd and the rich melon run, and the rock and the tree and the cottage enfold, with broad leaves all greenness and blossoms all gold. Like that which o'er Nineveh's prophet once grew, while he waited to know that his warning was true, and longed for the storm cloud and listened in vain for the rush of the whirlwind and the red fire rain. On the banks of the Hanil, the dark Spanish maiden comes up with the fruit of the tangled vine laden, and the Creole of Cuba laughs out to behold through orange leaves shining on the broad spheres of gold. Yet with dearer delight from his home in the north, on the fields of his harvest, the Yankee looks forth, where crooknecks are coiling and the yellow fruit shines, and the sun of September melts down on his vines. Ah, on Thanksgiving Day, when from east and from west, from north and from south come the pilgrim and guest, when the gray-haired New Englander sees round his board the old broken links of affection restored, when the care-wearied man seeks his mother once more, and the worn matron smiles where the girl smiled before. What moistens the lip and brightens the eye? What calls back the past like the rich pumpkin pie? O fruit beloved of boyhood, the old days recalling, when wood grapes were purpling and the brown nuts were falling, when wild ugly faces we carved in its skin, glaring out through the dark from a candle within, when we laughed round the corn heap with hearts all in tune, our chair a broad pumpkin, our lantern the moon, telling tales of the fairy who traveled like steam in a pumpkin shell coach with 2 rats for her team. Then thanks for thy present, none the sweeter or better, ere smoked from an oven or circled a platter. Fairer hands never wrought at a pastry more fine, brighter eyes never watched o'er its baking than thine. And the prayer which my mouth is too full to express swells my heart that thy shadow may never be less, that the days of thy lot may be lengthened below, and the fame of thy worth like a pumpkin vine grow, and thy life be as sweet and its last sunset sky, golden tinted and fair as thy own pumpkin pie. So I'm wondering if anyone else has heard the joke that's going around about nostalgia. That just isn't what it used to be. My generation, which academics have now titled the millennials, seems to be a particularly nostalgic one. It's not hard to find articles and Facebook pages on the internet about cool things that used to exist in the far and distant past of the 1990s, but don't anymore. Heck, even vinyl records are making a bit of a comeback these days. But why is this happening? My current theory, is that my generation's penchant for nostalgia represents what I call a flight to authenticity. Because so much of what we are confronted with, presented with, and consume in our larger culture feels authentic and dehumanizing, we find little ways to fight it. Our education system is less concerned with shaping our next generation of creative thinkers and leaders, and instead more concerned with creating good test takers. Is it a surprise then that the Montessori movement, charter schools, and even the unschooling movement are growing by the day? Our food is processed beyond recognition with materials, I hesitate to call them ingredients, that have more syllables than flavors. Thus, we respond with things like the Natick Community Organic Farm, for which our own Regina Fritz is on staff, and which many of you have sent your children to learn how to plant a garden and be in communion with the earth. And nostalgia lets us do that too. I suspect that when we see that, as the poet says, we have broken links of affection. And whether you are a care-wearied man or a worn matron, recalling the days when we were based in authentic relationships with one another and to ourselves and to the universe around us, it frees us of that anxiety of inauthenticity just for a little bit. But there's a dark side to this. For when nostalgia degrades into a desire for a romanticized past that never quite existed, it causes nothing but pain and misery to us when we try to recreate it and fail. We remember the camaraderie with which we had our friends, but we forget the bitterness for which we sometimes acted toward each other as children. So if your nostalgia is calling you to live a more authentic and full life, do so. Not just in a simple copying of the past, but living out those same values in your current situations. Our relationships as adults are not the same as the ones we had as children, and that's okay. But people of all ages can have deep and meaningful friendships based on joy and laughter. We can purposefully slow down and get to know the people who work at Tilly and Salvy's or at the organic farm. We can even enjoy the simple pleasure of the pumpkin.